Level 1, the seeker. You are 24 years old. You live in a studio apartment above a laundromat, and the dryers hum through the floor at night. You work a job that pays your rent and nothing else, answering phones for a company that sells extended warranties on kitchen appliances. You went to college for something you don't do anymore. Your parents call on Sundays and ask when you're gonna figure things out. You don't have an answer for them. You don't have an answer for yourself either. You scroll through a feed at 1 a.m. and a video stops your thumb. A woman is talking about a room in Ohio where 200 people found something she calls alignment. She doesn't look crazy. She looks like she slept well for the first time in years. You watch 9 more videos that night. You watch 40 more the next week. A friend of a friend invites you to a Tuesday night gathering in a converted warehouse, folding chairs arranged in a circle, string lights overhead. You go because you have nothing better to do on a Tuesday. A man walks to the center of the circle. His name is Elias. He doesn't yell. He talks quietly, and the room leans in to hear him, and you lean in too. He talks about a hollowness. He says everyone in the room carries a specific ache he describes in such precise detail that you feel your own chest tighten. He says the ache has a name, and the name is disconnection. And disconnection has a cure, and the cure is here, in this room, in these people. Afterward, a woman your age hugs you like she's known you for years. She asks your name and actually listens to the answer. Nobody has listened to your name like that in longer than you can remember. You write your name and number on a clipboard by the door. You tell yourself, you're just curious. You go back the following Tuesday, then the one after that. Somewhere around the 5th Tuesday, you stop telling your parents where you're spending your evenings. Level 2, the initiate. You are 25. You've moved into a shared house with 4 other members, a craftsman with a wraparound porch that the group calls the nest. Your old friends stopped texting back around month 3, and you told yourself it was because they never understood you the way this room does. The nest runs on a schedule, morning circle at 6 a.m., where you speak your gratitude aloud before anyone eats. Study sessions in the afternoon, working through Elias's writings, a slim book called The Undivided Self that you've now read 4 times, underlining different passages each pass. Evening service, where you clean the common spaces and prepare food for the larger gatherings. You give the group your first real donation this year, $800. Most of your savings because a facilitator explains that money is just another attachment, and attachments are what keep you divided from yourself. You feel lighter after you give it. You genuinely do. You are assigned a mentor named Priya, 3 years into the group, calm in a way that makes you want to be calm too. She teaches you the vocabulary. Charge, meaning the emotional residue of your old life. Leak, meaning any outside contact that reintroduces charge. Undivided, the state everyone is climbing toward. You start using these words with your family on the rare calls you still take. Your mother asks what a leak is. You can't explain it to her. You realize you don't actually want to. Explaining it would mean translating something sacred into words built for a smaller world, and you don't want to shrink it down that far. You miss your grandmother's funeral because it falls during a mandatory retreat weekend, and Priya tells you that grief is one of the deepest attachments, the hardest one to release, and that missing the funeral is actually an opportunity for growth. You believe her. You cry about it later, alone, in a bathroom with the fan running so no one hears. Level 3, the true believer. You are 27, 3 years in now. You no longer question the schedule, the donations, the vocabulary. You've stopped thinking of it as a schedule at all. It's just your life. The way waking up and breathing are just your life. You've given the group most of what you own at this point, your car. Sold at Elias's suggestion, because vehicles represent an escape route the mind clings to, even when it swears it doesn't need one. You take the bus everywhere now, and you tell people you actually prefer it. More time to reflect. You believe that when you say it. You've cut contact with your last remaining outside friend, a woman named Dana you grew up with, after Priya sat you down and reviewed a printout of your recent texts with her. Charge, Priya said, pointing at 3 separate lines. You deleted Dana's number that night with Priya standing in the doorway, and something in you screamed the whole time you did it, and you didn't listen to the scream because you'd learned by then that screams like that were exactly the kind of thing you were supposed to be releasing. You start speaking at Tuesday circles now, standing where Elias once stood the night you first walked in, telling your own story of hollowness and alignment to a new crop of 24-year-olds with tired eyes. You watch them lean in exactly the way you once leaned in. You feel something powerful doing that. You don't examine the feeling too closely. Level 4, the recruiter. You are 29. Your job now, your only job, is bringing people in. You have a quota, though nobody calls it that. Elias calls it your circle of light, the number of undivided souls you're responsible for illuminating each quarter. You've gotten good at finding them. Lonely people scroll differently than content people. And you've learned to spot the difference in seconds. The too frequent posting, the captions that ask questions nobody answers, the late night likes on strangers' vacation photos. You message a 22-year-old named Marcus who posted about failing out of his second semester of grad school. You don't mention the group at first. You just listen. You ask him real questions, and you actually do listen to the answers. Because you've learned that the listening has to be real or it doesn't work. The mark can always feel the difference between genuine attention and a script. 3 weeks later, you invite him to a Tuesday circle. He comes. He writes his name on the clipboard. You feel a flush of something you don't let yourself name as pride. Because pride is supposed to be another attachment, but it feels different than pride. It feels like purpose, and you cling to that distinction hard. You bring in 11 new members this year. Elias mentions your name in a Sunday address in front of 400 people now, the group having grown that large without you quite noticing the scale of it. He calls you a bright light. You feel something in your chest unlock that you didn't know was still locked. Level 5, the inner circle. You are 32. You live in the main compound now, a converted retreat center 2 hours outside the city, 300 acres, a lake, cabins arranged in careful rings around a central hall. You are one of 19 people who report directly to Elias. You wear a small silver pin on your collar that marks your rank, and new members' eyes go to the pin before they go to your face. Your job has a title now, Steward of Alignment. In practice, it means you decide who is struggling, who is doubting, who needs what the group calls intensive attention. You've learned things at this level you didn't know at level 1. You've learned that the light everyone chases is maintained by shadows most members never see. The members quietly move to isolated cabins for reflection after they ask the wrong question in the wrong circle, the ones whose phones you personally confiscate at Elias's direction. The sleep schedule's disrupted during what's called a purification week, 4 hours a night for 11 days, exhaustion, doing quietly and efficiently what argument never could. You conduct your first intervention this year, a woman named Sarah who tried to leave. You sit across from her for 6 hours. You use every technique Priya once used on you. The same words, the same patient voice, the same careful escalation, from warmth to guilt to fear. Sarah stays. You tell yourself you saved her. Some nights you actually believe it. Other nights you lie awake in your cabin and hear Sarah's voice from that room, the exact pitch of it when she stopped fighting, and you understand for one unbearable minute exactly what you did. You get up and do a breathing exercise from the undivided self until the minute passes. Level 6, the architect. You are 36. Elias has started calling you into his private meetings now, the ones held in the old farmhouse at the edge of the property that ordinary members aren't permitted to approach. You help design the intensive programs. You help write the new material, sections added to a second book, ghostwritten by you and 2 others but published under Elias's name alone, because ideas belong to the undivided collective and individual authorship, is one more ego attachment. You don't mind, or you've trained yourself not to mind. You help manage the money now too. Millions of dollars flowing through a web of donations, retreat fees, a wellness brand the group launched 2 years ago that sells supplements at a 400% markup to members who believe the pills. Clear the fog between them and alignment. You know, the supplements are just vitamins repackaged from a supplier in Ohio. You justify it the way you've justified everything for a decade. The outcome matters more than the mechanism. And the outcome is people finding what you found, the warmth of that first Tuesday, multiplied by thousands. You stop believing every word of the doctrine somewhere around this year, though you couldn't name the exact day it happened. You keep performing belief perfectly. The performance and the belief used to be the same thing. Now they're not. And you're the only one who can tell the difference. And telling anyone else the difference is unthinkable, because you've watched what happens to people who voice doubt, and you built half of what happens to them. Level 7, the enforcer. You are 41. Your title now is Director of Community Integrity, which means you handle the people who leave and the people who talk. A former member named Rachel gives an interview to a local news station this year, describing the compound, the sleep deprivation, the confiscated phones, the money. You are assigned to manage the response. You draft the statement calling her unstable, mentally ill, a disgruntled former associate with a documented history of instability that you fabricate the documentation for. You hire a private investigator to find things in Rachel's past, a DUI from 9 years ago, a custody dispute, anything that can be weaponized in the group's carefully worded press release. It works. The story dies within a week, buried under the group's superior resources and Rachel's own exhausted inability to keep fighting an organization with this much money and this many lawyers. You feel sick about it for exactly one night. Then you file the feeling under charge and move on, because that's the skill you've spent 17 years building, the ability to file feelings and move on. You manage 4 more departures this year, using variations of the same playbook. You become extremely good at your job. You hate exactly how good you've become at it in the specific rooms of yourself you no longer visit. Level 8, the second. You are 46. Elias is aging now, his hair gone fully white, his hands shaking slightly during long addresses, in a way the group quietly explains as a sign of his intensifying connection to something beyond ordinary human limitation. You run the organization's daily operations almost entirely. You are, by any practical measure, more powerful than he is. You could leave. You have the resources now. Contacts outside. Money you've quietly diverted into an account Elias doesn't know about. An insurance policy you built without fully admitting to yourself that's what it was. You don't leave. You've asked yourself why more times than you can count, and you've never landed on an answer that isn't some version of, this is the only life I know how to live anymore. The group has grown to 11,000 members across 6 countries. You oversee the expansion into a new city each year. You sit in board meetings for the wellness brand, now valued at $40 million. And you use language like brand equity and market penetration, words that would have made you laugh at 24, words that now feel as natural to you as your own name. Elias names you his successor this year, in front of the inner circle, in the farmhouse, in a ceremony that borrows heavily from the language of coronations without ever using that word. You accept. You tell yourself it's so you can change things from the inside once you're in charge. You've been telling yourself that for 6 years. Level 9, the heir. You are 50. Elias dies in the spring, quietly, in his sleep, in the farmhouse bedroom he rarely left in his final year. The group holds a 3-day vigil. 11,000 members grieve a man, most of them met only through video screens in later years, his health having kept him from large gatherings since level 8. You deliver the eulogy. You mean almost none of it. You wrote it strategically, calibrated word by word for maximum emotional impact on a room you understand better than you understand yourself at this point. You are named the new leader in a ceremony 3 weeks later. They put a robe on you that Elias designed himself years ago, anticipating this exact moment. You feel the weight of it settle onto your shoulders, and you understand, standing there, that you are now the final authority for 11,000 human beings' understanding of truth, meaning, and their own worth as people. The scale of that terrifies you for about 4 minutes. Then, a familiar mechanism kicks in, the one you built at level 6, the one that files feelings and moves on. And the terror gets filed, and you walk to the podium, and you speak. And the room leans in exactly the way you once leaned in 26 years ago, in a warehouse with string lights, when you were 24 and hollow, and someone finally listened to your name. Level 10, the prophet. You are 58. You live on a private island now, purchased 4 years ago with money the wellness brand generated. Officially a retreat sanctuary for the innermost circle. Unofficially a place where almost no one is permitted to say no to you about anything. Your face is on the cover of the 3rd book, your own words this time, no longer hidden behind Elias's name. Members don't look you in the eye anymore. They look at a point somewhere above your shoulder, near where a halo would be in the paintings. Some of them keep in their homes. Paintings you didn't commission and can't quite bring yourself to ask anyone to take down. You have everything the 24-year-old in the studio apartment above the laundromat could never have imagined wanting. You also have not had an unscripted conversation with another human being in longer than you can calculate. Every word directed at you, every question, every laugh, arrives pre-shaped by the fact that you could end someone's entire chosen life with a single sentence. You've started to suspect, in the very early hours, in the one small window before your staff wakes and the performance resumes, that you built the most elaborate prison in the history of longing and installed yourself as both warden and only prisoner. You think sometimes about the woman in that first video, the one who looked like she'd finally slept well. You wonder if she was performing too, that far back, at the very beginning, or if the performance came later, the way it came for you, one filed feeling at a time. You'll never know. She died 6 years ago. Her funeral wasn't announced to the general membership. Grief, the group still teaches, is one of the deepest attachments. Somewhere tonight, a 24-year-old in a studio apartment stops scrolling on a video of a woman who says she's found alignment. The woman doesn't look crazy. She looks like she's finally slept. The 24-year-old writes her name and number on a form that will reach a room with folding chairs and string lights by Tuesday. She has no idea what she's walking into. She'll learn. They always do. The cycle continues.